The average Steam user buys 4 games a year. 4, despite 20,000 releases. Something broke in gaming discovery. And the data shows it's worse than you think. Young men are now more likely to gamble, trade crypto, and spend time on OnlyFans than to play a new video game. Are games boring, or is it just too hard to find the good ones? Last year, more games released on Steam than its entire first decade combined. PlayStation saw 4 times as many releases as 5 years ago. But new games captured less than 7% of total playtime. Games 6 or more years old account for nearly 3/4 of all played hours. Let me show you the numbers no one's talking about. Matthew Ball's State of Video Gaming in 2026 is 164 slides of data that most gamers will never read because it's built for investors and executives. But buried in those slides is a story that affects every single person who plays games. Start with this. The top gaming franchises, in this case we're talking about titles that are 9 to 33 years old, hold 45% of all player hours. Nearly half of all gaming time goes to franchises older than many of the people actually playing them. New game releases? They get somewhere between 4 and 7% of total playtime. And that number is actually shrinking. 5 years ago, games 6 years or older accounted for 57% of playtime. Today, it's 72%. Players aren't exploring more. They're retreating into what they already know. And it's not because gamers are lazy. Look at the math from the other direction. The median Steam user plays only 4 games per year. 86% of US gamers buy somewhere between 0 and 4. That's just not a market of adventurous explorers. That's a market of people who found their 2 or 3 games they like to play and they just stopped looking. So you've got a supply explosion. More games than ever, colliding with a demand collapse in terms of actual discovery. And this isn't an accident. The entire economic structure of the gaming industry is now set up to make this worse. Let me show you why. Here's the headline everyone reported. The gaming industry hit $195.6 billion in 2025. It's an all-time record. Every segment, mobile, PC, console, they all set new highs. It sounds incredible. Here's what nobody reported. That number is a lie. Not literally, the money of course is real, but where it came from tells a completely different story. China represents 20% of the market, but 38% of the growth. And Chinese publishers, including the revenue they earn outside of China, captured roughly half of all global spending growth since 2019. Half. And 84% of Chinese player spending goes to Chinese-made games. So what does that mean? The market is essentially closed to Western developers. So a huge chunk of that 196 billion, Western studios can't touch it. So let's strip out China and look at what's left. Console gaming technically hit an all-time high at 41.6 billion. But when you break it down, actual game sales, DLC, and microtransactions went down 3.7 billion since 2020. 119% of consoles' net growth came from the subscriptions, like PlayStation Plus, Game Pass, Nintendo Switch Online. The money people actually spend on buying games on console is shrinking. Subscriptions are just papering over the decline. Then there's Roblox. One platform, captured 60% of all non-China gaming growth since 2021. Roblox now has more daily users than PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox. Its monthly engagement hours rival Steam, PlayStation, and Fortnite combined. So, strip out the Chinese publishers entirely. All their revenue, domestic and international. What's left for non-Chinese game makers? How much did their realized market actually grow since 2020? $1 billion in 5 years. Less than 1%. And that still includes Roblox and subscriptions propping up the number. The total market grew $24 billion. Traditional game makers got just $1 billion of it. That is the real state of gaming. And this is why 44,000 people lost their jobs in 4 years. It's not a mystery. It's not mismanagement. It's just cruel, cruel math. When the actual market for your product is flat, but the cost of making games keeps climbing, bigger teams, longer dev cycles, higher player expectations for production value, there's only one place for margins to go. From 2019 to 2022, annual content spending across the industry grew $11 billion, nearly 40%. But most of the revenue growth was going to China, Roblox, and subscriptions. So publishers were spending dramatically more on making games, while their share of the pie barely moved. The result? The weighted average operating margin, that means profits, guys, after their expenses, for major publishers has been nearly cut in half, from the high 20s to just around 16%. The median tells the same story, just not as dramatically. Roughly 30% at peak, down to about 22%. Total industry profits are down despite revenue being up 40%. And the response from publishers is exactly what you'd expect. Content investment. The money they spend actually making games hit a 7-year low relative to revenue. Venture capital funding for game development fell 55% in a single year. And outsourcing now accounts for over 35% of all development spending, up from nowhere 5 years ago. Cost savings just jumped from the 5th to the 2nd most cited reason companies outsource. This is why your favorite studio got shut down. This is why that game you were excited about got canceled. When margins collapse, publishers stop taking risks. They double down on proven franchises, they cut new IP, and they ship what's safe, which means fewer interesting games get made, which means discovery gets worse, which means players retreat further into what they already know. It's a death spiral, and it's accelerating. But the real question isn't why the industry is struggling. It's what's stealing audience in the first place. Because the competition gaming now faces, it's not what you think. When people talk about gaming's competition, they usually mean other games. Fortnite versus Call of Duty, Steam versus Epic, PlayStation versus Xbox. Ball's report says that's the wrong frame entirely. Gaming isn't losing to other games. It's losing to things that aren't games at all. Gamer participation in the United States is still 2.5 to 4 percentage points below where it was before the pandemic. South Korea, one of the most gaming-obsessed countries on Earth, is down 22% from its pandemic peak. Canada lost roughly 1 in 6 adult players between 2018 and 2022. Across the 8 biggest gaming markets in the world, both PC and console and mobile participation have declined from their 2021 peaks. Fewer people are playing games, period. So where did they go? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. TikTok consumes 102 million hours per day in the United States alone. US sports betting generated $17 billion in gross gaming revenue last year. That's already 2/3 the size of the entire traditional US gaming market. In the 7 states where online casino gambling is legal, iGaming already represents 21% of all video game spending. 21% in 7 states. If you include iGaming nationally, US gaming growth flips from negative to positive 12%. But here's the stat that should genuinely alarm anyone who cares about the future of games. Ball's report includes a survey of men aged 18 to 34, gaming's core demographic. Gaming? Men 18 to 34, they're 1.4 to 2 times more likely than the average person to be into it. Makes sense, fine. Crypto and meme coins, they're 3.6 times more likely to be into it. Sports betting, 3.3 times. OnlyFans, 3 times. The demographic that gaming was built on, young men with disposable income and free time, is now more drawn to gambling and crypto speculation than to video games. That's not a competitor you can outdesign. That's just a structural shift in what entertainment means to an entire generation. So let's put it all together. Market is flat, margins are collapsing, publishers are cutting investment and playing it safe. The core audience is being pulled away by competitors that gaming can't match on dopamine delivery. This is why you can't find good games anymore. Not because good games don't exist, they do, but because every incentive in the system is pointed away from making them. Which raises the obvious question. If Western publishers are trapped in this squeeze, who is still making ambitious, interesting games? The answer is the most important part of this entire report. Remember that stat about China capturing half of global growth? Most people hear that and think it's bad news. I think it might be the best news in this entire report. Here's why. When Western AAA publishers are operating on margins in the mid-teens with declining content investment, they cannot afford to take creative risks. You get sequel after sequel, live service after live service, because the math only works if the game is a guaranteed hit. But studios operating in markets where the economics still work, they can afford to be ambitious. Myth Wukong didn't come from a publisher who needed a safe bet. It was an indie studio. It came from a Chinese studio that had room to make something no Western publisher would have greenlit, a single-player action game based on a 16th century Chinese novel. It sold 20 million copies. This is not a one-off. This is the leading edge of a structural shift. The non-Western markets that Ball identifies as driving all the growth, they're also producing the most creatively ambitious games. Blood Message, the games I covered in my 9 games to watch in 2026 video. Studio after studio from Korea, Japan, China, and Southeast Asia, making things that feel genuinely new because they're operating in an economic environment that still allows it. Meanwhile, Ball's own report maps out what Western growth actually looks like. Mobile advertising revenue, $67 billion a year, nearly matching all PC and console consumer spending combined. Subscription revenue replacing actual game purchases, outsourcing hitting record highs, platform fees extracting $33.7 billion from publishers. And here's the extrapolation Ball doesn't make explicitly, but the data screams. If mobile gaming survived margin pressure by going ad-supported, and PC and console is now facing the same margin pressure, how long before ads become standard on your PlayStation and PC? We're already seeing it. Ubisoft experimenting with in-game ads, Xbox dashboard advertising, publishers exploring ad-supported free-to-play premium games. The $67 billion mobile ad market is proof of concept. The console and PC versions of in-game advertising are coming. Ball's final thesis is that there's no single gaming industry anymore. There are many. And the uncomfortable truth is that the segments most gamers care about, console, PC, packaged games, new IP, Western studios, indie games, are all growing well below market rate or outright shrinking. The segments that are thriving, mobile ads, live service, China, Roblox, subscriptions, are the ones most gamers don't think about or even actively dislike. And this is exactly the problem and exactly the opportunity. In a market that's drowning in content but starving for discovery, where 20,000 game releases on Steam every year, but 72% of playtime goes to titles that are over 6 years old, finding the games worth playing requires more effort than it ever has. The economics are pushing publishers towards safety. The platforms are optimized to keep you playing what you already play. Subscriptions make it easier to browse a library than to seek out something specific. And the attention economy is pulling the core audience toward gambling apps, social media, and messaging those OnlyFans girls. None of those forces help you find the next game that genuinely surprises you. But here's what Ball's data also shows. Great games still break through. 2025 was actually a strong year for quality releases. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Silk Song, Split Fiction, Myth Wukong's success carrying into this year. The games exist, the industry just isn't set up to help you find them anymore. That's what this channel is for. If my 9 games to watch in 2026 video put something on your radar that you hadn't heard of, that's not an accident. That's the point. In a market that's incentivized to show you the same 10 franchises forever, someone has to do the digging. I think that's us. The full 164-page report is linked in the description. It's free, and if you care about where gaming is headed, I think it's worth your time. If you want to see the games I think will define 2026, the ones you may not have seen because they're not part of an established IP, this is the video. Subscribe if you want more of this. We'll see you next time.